Hi, everyone. So I'll start off with kind of giving an overview of where we are with our portfolio, a little bit about the methodology for how we measure impact, and then I'll talk about the data till the end of 2025 from our portfolio. So by the end of 2025, we had supported 144 media organizations across the 34 countries that are on the map. Now, just for those who are new funders, the average grant duration is 24 months, and the average size of a grant is about $215,000 for the 2 years. We've also expanded our portfolio geographically in the last year. At the moment, for example, we're preparing a new call to support media outlets in Syria, and we hope this new call will be launched ahead of the summer. We've also just announced several new grants in Senegal and our first grantee in Côte d'Ivoire. Next slide, please, Brady. But for today's analysis, we're focusing on a sample of 57 grantees being media organizations here. And these have all had active funding in 2025 and had received at least 3 months of support by year end. Geographically, the sample is split across all of our regions, with EAP, Eastern Europe, at 35%, Latin America at 28%, APAC at 19, SWANA, Southwest Asia, North Africa at 12%, and Sub-Saharan Africa at 5%. Now, around 3/4 of these organizations are digital natives and 1/4 are legacy media. And on average, grants in the sample have had funding for about 14 months. And just to say, we measure change over time, so from the start of each grant to the end of the analyzed period. So the data I'll be discussing today really captures that cumulative progress from the beginning of the grant to the end of 2025. And for the new donors who may not know this, we've developed in the past 2 years ML framework that brings all of our media organization grantees into one shared reporting system. So all of our grantees across the world report twice a year at the same time using the same core quantitative indicators that measure trends around audience, finances, and workforce in terms of retention, in terms of diversity. And this enables us really to shift from individual grantee stories, which are obviously really important in order to look at examples and qualitative data, but it also allows us to look, especially given our growing portfolio across the world, at the broader trends in the majority world where we operate. And these are the trends that I'll be focusing on in the next couple of slides. So when it comes to economic resilience, which is obviously one of our core objectives with our support, I think I don't need to kind of talk about this, but obviously we all know that the past year, at least 2025, was one of the most difficult funding environments that independent media have faced in recent memories. And of course, that was reflected in the data. More than half of our grantees saw their grant funding fall. So the average fall was 38% in their overall funding. But some of them experienced more extreme cuts. So several of our outlets experienced 60% or more funding cuts. Now, so 2025 obviously didn't look good, but when we looked at their trajectory over time from the beginning of their grant to the end of 2025, we saw that despite this fluctuation and this major dip in 2025, the funding has still shown a clear growth effect, not just a stabilization effect. So looking at the data in that way shows that 77 of our grantees still increased their total revenue over the life of the grant, and the average growth was 34%. Non-grant revenue, so all revenue derived from kind of commercial streams or from audiences, increased for 72% of the organizations, and the average growth is 26%. And around 60% of all of our grantees added a new revenue stream in 2025. And yeah, you can see there's a lot of experimentation. So what we see clearly is that in the data is that duration matters because it gives grantees that space and time to invest and experiment with new revenue streams. And media organizations, and we have that data to back that up, that media organizations that have been supported by us for more than 12 months saw their revenue growth by 64% on average, compared to only 13% in revenue growth for those supported for less than a year. Really, the difference there is about time. It shows how long-term support changes that trajectory. And and improves the kind of growth effect. Now, one of the clearest area where this long-term growth is visible across our portfolio is audience revenue. So audience revenue is becoming an important contributor to non-grant income. In 2025, also 70% of our grantees with audience revenue streams saw that stream grow by 110%. It is now the second largest source of non-grant revenue after private advertising. And we're currently developing a learning brief on audience revenue to better understand what's driving that growth, but also there has been many approaches that have been tried and tested and haven't worked. So we're looking at what's worked and what hasn't, and what are the factors that have contributed to that across our portfolio. Now, when we look at audience, this has always been a clear trajectory of growth for our media organizations. And despite the challenges again of last year, platform shifts, the AI overviews, audience reach and engagement continues to grow. And I'll say more about that when I talk about the SWANA region, but 75% of our grantees increased their audience by an average of 23%. 77 grew social media engagement with an average of 159%. And the average reach, as you'll see here, and you'll see it in our annual report, across all of our platforms in 2025 is 169 million per month. So if you look at cumulatively across our portfolio. So I'll stop there and hand over to Rita, who will illustrate this impact in practice in the EAP region.